You roamed on the edges of the underworks, close to the ruins of knowledge centers. And whatever secrets stored within that could be physically salvaged. You've carved a path for yourself through every tool available to you. But there's only so much a cunning mind can achieve in this barbaric world. But then, you found that which you were looking for. You couldn't make much sense of it, but you knew your search had ended. The next day would begin with hope. And what rough beast? It's our come round at last. Slouches toward Bethlehem to be born.
I have never been more excited for a game in my life. Divine Frequency is an upcoming survival horror retro shooter with immersive sim RPG elements and Souls-like bosses, cryptic lore, and visceral combat made on the greatest game engine known to man, the Doom engine. Now, that was a lot of adjectives to describe this game, but I need you to understand just how unbelievably excited I am for this game. There's currently a short demo out that you can play through, and I played it from start to finish 3 times. 3 for a demo. This game has wormed its way into the gray matter of my brain so viciously that I cannot stop thinking about it. I need this game. I need an IV full of it going straight into my goddamn veins. It's everything I've ever wanted in a game. Creepy, unsettling visuals that look like a mix of Lost in Vivo and System Shock, a combat system that rewards careful thinking and planning, immersive sim elements that affect how you play and interact with the game's world, a cryptic story that makes no goddamn sense but makes me feel like a smart little boy for reading it, systems for upgrading and evolving your character, and these absolute mad lads even put a dodge button in this game, so it's just like Dark Souls.
Holy shit, I'm gonna come.
It's beautiful. I mean, just look at it. Mwah! It's perfect. But I'm getting ahead of myself here, so let's start from the beginning. Divine Frequency is an upcoming horror shooter being developed by Good Karma and published by Hellforge Studios. The game is a mix of Silent Hill-style survival horror elements with immersive sim RPG progression and the look and feel of a gory, grimdark horror game similar to Outlast or Amnesia the Bunker, but with a more apocalyptic analog horror focus. Currently, there's only a demo out, with the full game having a current release of eventually, but the demo has more than enough in it to get you interested. To start, there's 3 different classes for you to choose from, with presumably several more planned for the full release. For now, you have your choice between a character based around strength, one based around wits, and one based around physique. The strength character is exactly what you think they are. They've got lightning fast hands and can punch a dude so hard that they'll heal themselves. They also have reduced recoil and stamina consumption, but are arrogant, so you're basically just an asshole. Then you've got wits. This is the big brain stuff. Although, to be honest, it seems like this works a little bit more like dexterity does in Dark Souls. You're faster with small firearms and get more invincibility frames when dodging, plus you have psionic potential. But psionic powers aren't in the demo right now, so forget about that. Finally, you've got the physique option, which is also the coolest option in my opinion, because it lets you become a disgusting sewer mutant. If you decide to choose physique, you'll be rewarded by growing extra skin folds, which allow you to carry more items, as well as increased health, stamina, and resistances. Plus, you get an extra mutation point to use for upgrades, which also aren't in the game. Well, kind of. There's this upgrade totem in the game that lets you spend your exaltation points on stat upgrades. although I found it out of bounds and had to no-clip through several walls to get to it, so I'm guessing the developers don't want me messing with it just yet. Besides your class affecting your stats and combat capabilities, your choice will also affect how you interact with NPCs and the game's world. For example, you might find a door that can only be pushed open if you're strong enough, or you might be able to get more information from an NPC if you have a high enough intelligence stat. Or you might find a strange yet delicious looking egg inside a hole in a wall. A normal character would have to choose between eating the shell or the yolk of the egg, each of which will give you a different perk. But if you're playing a grotesque rat-faced mutant monstrosity, then you can just unhinge your jaw like a snake and swallow the egg whole, giving you both perks at once. After choosing your class, you awake in a strange room and get the pleasure of wandering around in a building from some strange hell dimension that only exists in the boundless void of space-time. And then you get to meet the emissaries, a trio of otherworldly cosmic beings who leave you with the only guidance you'll receive in this game:
seek depth.
Afterwards, you realize it was all just a dream and wake up in your $6,500 a month New York City apartment, where you find a strange note full of seemingly random coordinates before getting sleepy again and deciding to go back to bed. In your dreams, you have strange visions of barren landscapes and dark tunnels before you fall down a hole and get dropped into the game's world. From here, you're left to freely explore the horrors of this world as you please, and there's plenty of creepy critters and weird environments for you to explore, so have at it. If you hit tab at any point, you're greeted by the classic immersive sim style PDA menu that lets you look at any items or tools you've acquired throughout your playthrough. There's also a section with descriptions of any weapons you found throughout your time here. More on those in a bit. There's a notes section that doesn't have too much info right now aside from cluing you in on any status effects or ailments you might experience while playing. And finally, there's a bestiary that gives you both visual and written descriptions of any enemies you come across during your playthrough. Now, this may seem like a novel idea at first, but I really love the inclusion of this in the game. I like when games don't try and shove their world-building lore down your throat and instead let you access it at your leisure. And the bestiary actually comes in handy while playing, as it can give you some helpful tips on how to handle any upcoming monsters, as well as providing you with strengths and or weaknesses they might have. It's a nice touch. Now let's talk graphics. Personally, I absolutely love the way this game looks. However, I should add a caveat here that the game comes out of the gate with a pretty heavy VHS filter by default that I personally turned off, as the effects seem to be just a little too much in my opinion. There's even still some present in the game with all the options turned off. But anyways, all the sprite work here looks fantastic. It's a mix of 2D pixel art that somehow also looks realistic and has a ton of animation frames. There's probably a name for this kind of style, but I have no idea what it is. Let me know in the comments if you know what it's called. But regardless, everything about this style just does it for me. Even simple stuff like reloading your weapon just looks absolutely fantastic. Combine this with the death and gore animations for enemies that all feel weirdly realistic, and you've got yourself a recipe for success. Not to mention that all the enemies here are super unique and really fit the whole anomalous SCP-inspired art style the game's going for. You've got creepy cultist guys, weird and human abominations, otherworldly cosmic beings, and of course, bugmen, all of which pose a serious threat to your character and really sell the environments here. And speaking of the environments, these are some of the best parts of the game. The game world just feels so dirty and grimy. It feels like your character should contract tetanus just from spending 5 minutes down here. The walls are all covered in rust, dirt, blood, and all other manner of detritus and bodily fluid, and everything in your surrounding is just all dingy and run down. So this is not a place you want to be, and the atmosphere down here is intense. The best word I can use to describe it is festering, and the look and feel of these environments makes it all the more strange when you end up happening upon a seemingly clean and untouched area, because it just feels so out of place compared to everything else. Like this bathroom that scared the absolute daylights out of me. Speaking of which, I'm not ashamed to say that I got jump scared more than a few times while playing through this game. Enemies will constantly pop out of nowhere to try and ruin your day, and this game seriously spiked my heart rate a fair few times. At the very least, the game is nice enough to give you a handful of tools for dealing with these threats when they arise. Now, again, this is only a demo, so the items and weapons you're given are a bit limited. In fact, there's really only 2 weapons in the game right now, 3 if you include your fists. You've got a handgun, which can shoot either hyper trauma bullets or armor piercing bullets, with the hyper trauma being good against flesh and the armor piercing being good against, well, armor. On top of that, you're also given a trench gun that shoots like any other video game shotgun, but can also be slam fired, increasing your rate of fire tremendously while making your weapon extremely inaccurate. However, there are a few differences for how this game approaches combat. First off, this is not a game where you will be constantly shooting a flood of bullets at everything in sight. Ammo in this game is scarce, and every bullet you fire matters. Most ammo pickups you find throughout the game's world will consist of only 1 or 2 bullets, so you better be damn sure that you hit all your shots unless you want to be left with nothing but your fists. On top of that, weapons have an insane amount of recoil in this game. All of the weapons sound powerful, and when fired they feel powerful too, with both of these weapons bucking like a bull whenever you pull the trigger. Again, this encourages you to aim your shots carefully, as you'll be forced to steady your aim between each shot. I saw a lot of people complaining about this mechanic online, but I actually like it. Considering your character is probably in such a panic from finding themselves in this strange and dangerous hellscape, it makes sense that they wouldn't be able to keep a steady hand. And even if you don't like it, it also looks like you'll be able to mitigate this through leveling up your strength attribute. But again, this isn't currently available in the demo. Finally, all your weapons have durability, and your weapons will break and quickly. A full magazine from your pistol takes out almost half of your weapon's durability, so I hope you've got good aim. The game only gives you so many weapon repair kits to keep everything working, so I think it's safe to assume that in the full release you're probably going to be forced to choose which weapons you like best. So expect the full release to be heavy on the survival horror, resource management gameplay elements. There's also going to be some traps for you to use if you prefer a more stealthy approach. You can find a mine lying on the ground in one of the levels that can be used to take out a particularly beefy enemy, and you can also find some electrocution traps hidden around the world that can be used to stun enemies for a few seconds. This is something that I would like to see expanded upon in the full release, with a wider array of traps and gadgets to help you take on some of the game's encounters. I am also interested to see how they handle the psionic powers in this game. We don't know much about them right now, but I can probably guess that there'll be some form of damaging spell or utility buff similar to how they were done in System Shock 2 or even BioShock. It looks like the game's weapons are also going to have potential psionic capabilities of their own. If you take a look at the weapons tab on your character screen, you'll notice that each weapon is capable of having their own unique attributes and abilities. For example, the pistol has a section dedicated to its secondary fire that states that players with a specific psionic ability will be able to use a secondary fire that shoots a swarm of insects at enemies that will inflict brain rot, which makes targets friendly and causes damage over time. On the other hand, the shotgun shows an alternative fire mode that allows you to shoot lightning bolts that will chain to additional enemies and stun them for a short time. You might also notice that each weapon has additional mechanics as well. The shotgun comes with a random damage multiplier for each of its pellets, as well as being capable of still functioning while at 0 durability. This leads me to believe that all of the weapons you'll be able to acquire in the full release will have their own unique specifications, or at least I hope they will. I've got a laundry list of things I would love to see in the full release, but we'll get to that a little later. Before that, I want to mention the game's boss encounters. The Steam page markets this game as having Souls-like boss encounters, but there's only 2 actual boss fights currently in the demo. The first of which is more of a gimmick fight against an enemy that reflects all your projectiles, forcing you to lure them under this giant crusher thing in order to take them out. Which I guess is technically Souls-like, since every Souls game has its fair share of gimmick fights. Looking at you, Bed of Chaos. And the other boss fight is against the Ascended Champion, who follows a more traditional Souls-like structure. The fight takes place in what the game refers to as a duel. In a duel, you can only fight with certain approved dueling weapons, and you can only damage a boss in a small window right after they attack. This forces you to dodge attacks and time your shots well enough to hit the boss in their parry window, as the game calls it. The dodge you're given here is more of a Bloodborne style dash and can be used either on the ground or in the air for a super dash. It took me a fair few tries to get a hang of the flow of combat when I fought this boss, but after everything clicked, I actually really enjoyed the whole dueling mechanic. It makes the boss fights feel more like a dance than anything else, and I think it gives the fights a really good ebb and flow compared to most of the boss fights I've experienced in games on the Doom engine, where you just circle strafe the whole time and hold down left click. Looking at you, Vomitorium. Based on how this game sets up the whole dueling mechanic, it seems like these fights are going to be a pretty big part of the boss fights as a whole, and I'm interested to see what the developers come up with. The last thing I want to talk about before getting to my list of things I would like to see in the final release is the game's story. Now, I'm gonna keep it real with y'all, I don't have a goddamn clue what's happening in this game. That's probably intentional, as the game describes its narrative as a deep and surreal tale of cosmic horror, existential conundrums, and off-kilter characters. When you stare into the abyss more often than not maniacally cackles back. So yeah, we're probably in for a very weird and cryptic storytelling style here. Most of the game's story, at least in the demo, is told to you through text dumps and interactions with a handful of NPCs that you can find around, like this little fella hiding out in a box who talks in funny little riddles. From what I can gather, the main idea here is going to be your character searching for some sort of ultimate power possessed by the cosmic beings who inhabit the deepest depths of this world, and there's a lot of stuff here about forgotten memories and dream sequences, so it seems like it's all going to be pretty surreal. That's all I could figure out, at least, but then again, I'm also kind of stupid, so maybe there's more to it. If you've got a better explanation than me, feel free to drop it in the comments. I'm curious to know what other people think. So now for my final thoughts. I think the developers have something really, really special here, and it looks like they're making a game that is entirely tailored to my own tastes. I meant it at the beginning when I said that I have never been so immediately hyped for a game to come out in my life. I am fully willing to tell every person I've ever met about this game because I'm so goddamn excited. Even the little bit we've seen so far seems so unbelievably good that I know the full release is going to be stellar. Now, what are my hopes for the full release? A couple of things to keep in mind. One, as I stated earlier, I'm kind of stupid, so if these ideas are bad, feel free to ignore them. Two, I know nothing about game development. The extent of my knowledge is that I took a coding 101 class in college and got a C-. So again, feel free to ignore everything I'm about to say. And three, I'm kind of stupid. First off, I would really like to see this dueling system expanded upon in the full release. I think this idea is something that is desperately needed in the world of very similar feeling games made on the Doom engine, and I love seeing fresh takes on the genre. Next, I would love if this game leaned heavily into the immersive sim elements and really let the player tailor their character to their preferred playstyle. I can see the bones of this system already in the stuff that's here in the demo, and I hope we get to dive deeper into all of that in the future. This extends to the weapons and perks in the game as well, and I think it would be great to have your interactions in the game's world be tied to your character's stats and abilities. And finally, I hope the developers lean into a variety of environments and enemy types in the full release. I know it's kind of cliche of me to suggest that there be more stuff in the game, but I think the structure of this game could really lend itself well to some unique and cool levels and enemy encounters that get unlocked as you delve further into the depths of whatever place it is you're in. We already got a little taste of some of that with the levels available in the demo, and I have no doubt that the devs are going to have some really insane stuff planned for the future, but hey, I'm just way too excited about this game's release, and I'm desperate to play more of this game as soon as possible. So overall, go play this demo, wishlist this game on Steam, throw some money at the developers, and if you like this video, consider subscribing, and maybe leaving me a like or a comment down below to let me know what you think. Please go play this game. I really want this to turn into something special, and I've got some pretty high hopes for the full release. As always, thank you so very much for watching, and I hope to see you all again soon.